Welcome to our desk side chat for the week of February 21st. Our guest today is John Reed. John is joining us from where again, John? Costa Rica? You're on vacation?
I'm in Santa Teresa in Costa Rica on vacation.
So really honored and really appreciative that you would take time away from your vacation to join us. Really awesome that you were willing to step up to the plate and help us talk about, I think, a really important topic, really important to what we're doing as part of our community, something that is going to continue to be important for our industry going forward, and something that you've been able to benefit from and I think are continuing to pursue is really leveraging mastermind study groups, trying to build the right communities. So if you could, before we get into that though, John, if you could just provide a little introduction of what you do with premium in financing and how you work with advisors, so people can get a little background on yourself, John.
Sure. So thanks for having me, John. This is exciting, and I'm glad to be able to do this from Costa Rica. Years ago, this wasn't possible, but technological progress is everywhere, right?
Yeah, we should have called this a beachside chat, but anyway.
So I've been in the life insurance industry since 2010, and it's constantly kind of evolved up to the point where I'm at now, which is almost exclusively as an outside consultant for other financial advisors, and most commonly other life insurance advisors. I fell into kind of this path starting around 2013. I left personal production at that point and started working at a private bank as an in-house high net worth insurance specialist. And what that really forced me to do was learn how to talk about complex life insurance issues with people who weren't life insurance experts. It was working with private bankers and trust officers and corporate financiers, the commercial bankers and the wealth managers, all about where insurance could fill a role in a client's portfolio, and then helping them sit down, talk with the client, and actually execute, put things in place. So that kind of joint work approach has been my bread and butter since 2013. If you fast forward to 2015, I got pulled into, I think they're the largest aggregator of premium financing business in the country. A team out in California. I met them and started working in-house there. And my primary focus was on packaging deals for the lenders and carrier approval. It's really once the client gave the green light to get things done as efficiently and fast as possible. That I did that for a handful of years, helped close a couple hundred cases, and really understood at the fine detail level what goes into a premium finance case that gets approved efficiently or doesn't. And then now what I do, I have two different ends of my business. I've bifurcated it. One half is the point of sale design work, sitting down with the client, helping them understand what the insurance project can look like, what the policy can do, how it fits into their overall plan, and then actually helping put and implement it. The second half is the financing specific. It's really just the interaction directly with the lender. And so oftentimes what I find is that there are advisors who are already adept at selling life insurance, marketing to clients, and finding a need for this. But the piece that they don't have expertise in is how to take that to the right bank, get the right deal, and make it as efficient as possible for a client. So that being an area that I excel at, I offer that as a service. And so with those two pieces together, that puts together the entire premium financing packet. But that's what I do now.
Nice. And you and I have talked a few times over the last couple of months and gotten to know each other virtually a little bit. And, the topic this week is leveraging masterminds. I know you've formed and have kind of put together, some groups, and, these have tied into your career trajectory. So I guess, can you talk a little bit about, how you have gone about, trying to make sure that you're putting those things together as efficiently as possible?
Yeah, sure. So I think when I hear the term mastermind group, what I think of is it's really just a micro community. It's a small group of people that are on either a similar path or have a similar goal, and they want to work together. And with a lot of times what that looks like is you want to help each other. You want to help yourself. You're looking for others who have maybe advanced in certain areas or who have different insights. and working together. I think I fell into my first mastermind group in the insurance space was something I started with an estate planning attorney I worked with out in Cincinnati, Ohio, when I first got into the business. This would have been 2010. He did estate planning. I did life insurance and a little bit of investment work at that time. I had a practice with Northwestern Mutual. What I said was, we both have the same goals. Our goals are to work with more and higher value clients. So the wealthier of the client we worked with, and the more of them we had, was going to directly drive the results of our business. And so what we sat down to do was figure out who else is going to be working with the same kind of clientele, who else is directly compensated for the quantity and quality of their clients. So this isn't going to be someone who's maybe I use the term loosely, but a career professional, someone who comes into an industry and then quickly leaves. So you see, there are people who are trying things out. What we wanted to do is find people who had a very specific focus and their target client was the same as ours. And the reason we wanted to do that was we thought that in order to be better advisors, we need to become better advisors. It was that simple. We need to be more well-rounded. We need to understand the other questions that the client was going to have and have resources to help them get answers faster. And so I'm not an attorney and I don't pretend to be one, but I had an attorney that I met with every 2 weeks and got to hear his perspective, got to hear his hot button topics, hear the red flags that he would see in a conversation, and start having those as part of my vernacular and warning flags for me. At the same time, he got to hear someone talk about insurance, where it made sense, what would be an appropriate approach or an inappropriate approach to that, the kind of due diligence that should go into any kind of implementation. In our little group, we met every 2 weeks for about 3 years. And we would meet every other Friday, 7:30 in the morning, 7:30 to 9 a.m. And I think that really accentuated for me what was possible in a mastermind group. We didn't want any overlapping professionals, because one thing I believe is that if two people in a room are saying the same thing, one of them is useless. And so we wanted people with a different perspective the entire time. So we had a state attorney, a corporate attorney, someone who could draft agreements between employees and contracts. I did the insurance and investment work. We had a CPA. We had a real estate developer, which was a really fun one for us to find, because he was buying, flipping, and helping develop rental properties for clients, and most of his investors were the kind of clients we wanted to work with. And so we had that different perspective out there. When our CPA, he left private practice and went and became an in-house CFO. And so when he realized he was no longer seeking new clients, we brought in a new one. And that was the kind of thing we ended up doing. But the first mastermind group we had was called WeBoost. It was WeBoost Business. It was a really remarkable first approach. Yeah, I'm happy to share more about, even as things got more developed, we came up with a better kind of marching orders. We actually broke it down so that each quarter we had a schedule to follow. As we became more intimate with each other and understood where we fought, what was working well for us, we developed this approach. And it was basically six meetings over the course of a quarter. And meeting number one was really a goal setting meeting. This turned into almost like a CEO roundtable. It was our peers talking to us about, what are your goals? What does that mean? Breaking it down to actions. I don't know if you've read the 12-week year or seen the kind of training materials that a lot of these firms do. They say, if your goal is to do this much production, then you need to meet with this many clients. In order to meet with this many clients, you need to have this many meetings. And you keep breaking it down to your daily actions. And we would do that with every single person in the group. And that was usually a session that I would lead, where I would help people, quantify their actions to tie them to the results they were shooting for. And everyone was very open. Everyone was very exposed. Everyone was very transparent, and everyone was asking for help. And that was session number one, was our goal setting meeting. Meeting number two was a kind of a roundtable. It was what we called hot button topics. It was just a brief overview of whatever you wanted to talk about your business, your industry, what clients hired you to do, fun projects you got to work on, but also red flags that when you hear them, it's a flag to say, hey, you should call me, that maybe the other advisors hadn't thought of before. So we would call those hot button topics. And then what we would do is we'd have 2 sessions of question and answer, where each person would have 20 to 30 minutes to be a presenter from their point of view, their level of expertise. And it wasn't just an open forum though. I've seen other groups that when you talk, they literally tell you to give your elevator pitch. We didn't want that. We didn't want the elevator pitch. What we wanted was answers to questions that our clients have asked us that they would be the expert for. That way, it's our actual questions that we're hearing. And so when the estate attorney came on, I would ask questions like, at what point does a young family need to put a trust and a will in place? What all documents do they actually need to do? What's the approximate cost and time frame to get that done? Those are questions I would have clients asking me whenever they're getting married and they're looking at life insurance as a defensive tool, but also for me to say, hey, have you considered this? And have those quick answers to the questions they're going to ask. So we would do that for two sessions where each group would, each person would get to go. But what they were given is the session before, it was rapid fire. Here's questions my people ask me. And then when they would come back and present, it was to answer all of those questions as best they could. So that was, those were sessions 3 and 4. Session 5, what we turned it into ultimately was a book review. We would all read a book once a quarter and discuss it. And we would have a guest speaker come in. We'd find somebody else who was outside of our group, not actually part of our group, but somebody that worked with our kind of clientele, or who had more experience and more senior partner somewhere out there, because most of us were pretty junior at this point. And they would come in and share their approach with us. We'd have a mentor kind of talk for one session. And then session 6 was our accountability. That's where we'd pull all the numbers and share, hey, in session 1, we talked about our goals and what we were willing to do and how we were going to get there. And session 6 was how far along did we come? Do we need course or fine tuning to get there? What do we want to do next? And then the next session was the next quarter's goal setting. So we did that for 3 years, and it was a outstanding way to learn. We focused on education, not referrals. There was no referral requirements. There was no desire. You didn't have to send business to anybody. It was really about education, and that was our priority. So
you mentioned referrals. I mean, what were you following a particular formula like BNI or something like? Because I think that's a big part of what they're doing. Or was this was just your own kind of structure that you put together?
So we actually created this as an anti-BNI group. I didn't like, so when I first got into the business and I started, asking about, hey, how do you meet more people? How do you develop business? The BNI was referred over and over. And when I saw that there was a requirement for referrals, but no tracking of the quality of them or the source or the intimacy of them, it never made sense to me. I would talk to people who had the horror stories of, yeah, this guy saw that there was a new a building sold, and so he said, hey, here's the guy who bought the building, you should call him and see if he wants to get credit card processing.
Public information.
Public information, right. And so that we didn't want that, so we didn't want to encourage it. What we said instead was there's no referral requirement, it's all education. And what you'd ultimately do is, if it wasn't good for you, you'd self-deselect. Yep. If the group wasn't good for you, you'd opt out. And even though there was no tracking or requirement of that, the biggest client I ever signed when I was in personal production came from that. It was a client of the estate attorneys. Their business had significant success very fast. They brought me in to help structure their life insurance for buy, sell, and for some estate planning. And there was no requirement for that. It was just because he asked the question, hey, who's looking at this? Have you ever considered having someone give it this kind of review? He had those red flag indicators in his head at the conversation. And so, no, it was the anti-BNI. And I hear that a lot, though. There's a group out here, I think, does it a little bit better. Not in Costa Rica, in California. There's a group, they're called Provisors. Have you ever seen those? Is there a Provisors where you are?
I'm not sure, but I mean, that rings a bell. I'm not sure. I don't know anything specific about it that came across, but
one thing they do that I think is interesting. They have their format is you have, I think, monthly, the big group setting. It could be 20, 30, 40 people. They try not to have not have too many overlapping professionals, but a big lunch meeting. And they have one outside presenter or one member present. Everyone gives a 60-second elevator pitch for 30 people, and then one person presents. And then the thing that I really like that they do is they push a troika, it's called, which is a group of 3, where they'll take 3 people and say, you need to go do a troika before the next meeting. So the 3 of you need to all go grab coffee or lunch and have a meeting. So it's not one-on-one, it's no heavy sales. A lot of times it's a veteran from the group, somebody who's new, and someone who's kind of in between. And they'll have you do a couple of those between sessions. So I like that small intimacy. Just for my sake, I prefer to have a group of people I really know well. I found kind of my optimal number is between 5 and 8. Mm-hmm. I think even 9 starts to feel a little unwieldy for me. 5 to 8 people in total feels like the right size group for me, where I can really know the people who are there. Everyone gets a chance to talk. No one's left out. Everyone's valued. That's the size group I look for. So I have a couple groups I'm in now. We started about a year ago, a group, we call ourselves the anti-business business group. It's all entrepreneurs. It's all folks who, this one specific is a men's group. And so part of it is that we can talk about issues that are important to us. We can talk about how we feel without feeling like we're either being too strong or too weak. And that's a big part of it, is that we want to be able to have an open forum for ourselves. And we meet once a month. We do a dinner, and it's really just putting us together to talk. There's no agenda for that, except that everyone has to come together and no one can pitch or be an a-hole. That's really the whole format there. And so
what
it's
happens if somebody does, or have you run into that where you've had to boot somebody out?
Yeah, they're just removed. Or the other thing is that there's a group chat that kind of sets this up, because we have about 12. This one's a little bit bigger. There's like 12 seats at the table that we reserve. And so it's the first 12 to reserve it, get to go. And we just we're really strict on who we let into the group chat for the invites. And so it has to be unanimous. Everyone has to say yay, or they're not added.
How are you? So generally speaking, people are going to self-select. Generally speaking, you have the right people. How are you finding the people to begin with?
What happened is, in this one specifically, there were 2 guys that I was introduced to maybe 2 or 3 years ago. One's he's a real estate guy. So he's a broker here in Orange County. And he's such a hustler. He's a former athlete and professional golf pro. And he just has that work ethic of, I'm like, hey, Brandon, I'm like, I really want to meet with you once a week or once every other week, because he checks in on his numbers. He checks in on his accountability. He's really structured and formed. He's like the kind of workout buddy I want, where he's going to show up. Maybe he let himself off the hook sometimes, but I'm not going to. And that's why I said, I really want to meet with you more often. And he was open to that. So we started talking through, how do we meet together more often? And there was a third guy who was another community builder, works on some really kind of sci-fi out there technology. So he's trying to like changing what pain patches look like. So he's kind of changing medicine. He's got his hands in a lot of things, but he's a high energy, exciting guy and very well networked. And the 3 of us said, why don't we start this little regular time together? And that turned into each of us adding a few people that we knew that were kind of ancillary to all of us. And that's just turned into, now as the group has grown, it is a bigger group. And it probably needs to be shrunk a little bit, to be honest. It's I think some people want it to be more of the larger group, and that'll probably have me deselect if it's 20 people every time. If it turns into a happy hour club instead of a dinner club, like that's just not what I'm looking for at this point. But we'll see. That's how it's grown. But definitely have met some amazing people. I'm being brought in to help one of the people who are in it is an entrepreneur, and he's getting ready to sell his second business. And so having a second large liquidity event, One of the guys two of the guys in the group are both wealth managers, and they've asked me to come in and kind of consult on the insurance side. So I'm going to help them figure out what that looks like as well. And that's not something I would have ever even approached. I've had dinner with the guy. We've just talked about things like this, like Costa Rica, talk about life, talk about what your values are. And all that gets to come out without it ever feeling like a sales pitch, because it's not. It's really just getting to know people. And I think that's my big thesis I'm working on, is that we're more sensitive to sales pitches than we've ever been before, because everyone can, we get interrupted constantly. It's this connection economy. It's the interruption economy. And so people who don't do that stick out as shining stars to us. These are just people. These are humans. These are people who have, that desire to help. And if you can get that point across over a meal, talking about travel, talking about the aches of building a business, and where do you hire a marketing firm? How do you launch your podcast? Those are you and I, that's how we bonded. We bonded talking about what is it like to build something? How hard is it to take the step and get out of one comfortable boat and put your foot in a rickety rowboat and say, I'm gonna get to shore. Like this boat's getting me home. And that's the kind of thing that's real. There was no sales pitch ever. There was no promises ever. It was camaraderie. And that's what I look for in my groups.
How important do you think, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? Having that mindset. I mean, do you think that that's foundational? I mean, because you're going to have people, you mentioned BNI, nothing bad or good, but there's going to be people that are going to have ulterior motives and things. I guess, how important is it to have the right mindset, when you're collaborating and working on kind of pursuing something that is going to be mutually beneficial for all the people involved?
I think mindset's everything for everything. It's really, what is your intention going into it? And regardless whether it's the right fit for you, I think any group can have a purpose. Any group can serve a value. When I think about a BNI group, is that just like any relationship I'm in, I want to give more value than I take. That's always important to me. So in a BNI group, I want to provide value. And that's probably more of an information gathering for me. It's more of, hey, what's going on out there? What are other people doing? It's more curiosity for me, but me being an open book, me being a good sharer, me not, me answering questions that people have if they have them. For the other groups, what I'm looking for is, the We Boost group was definitely more educational. That was the purpose of this. The guys group is really more camaraderie about business building. A lot of the people in there have, some of them have 5 employees, some of them have 10, some of them have 100, 200. And so it's getting to talk about business concerns has been the best part for us. And also a great excuse to have a steak dinner once a month. That's really been that one. But speaking of mindset, there's one other group that I'm in. We started about, I want to say it was middle of last year. It's kind of, I think, April or May timeframe. And we call it the Zen Duffy Cruise. In Newport Beach, there's a boat out here. It's really popular, called a Duffy boat. And it's a little electric, silent, very slow, goes 5 or 6 knots boat. And it's covered as a canopy and windows. You can use it all year round. It's almost like a floating living room. It's what I call the Newport equivalent of a pontoon boat. And so it's, let me turn off this beeping. And so the purpose of our group there, I had a meeting with a wealth advisor, and we started talking just about mindset. And we talked for 2 hours about mindset and meditation and our purpose and how we connect and things like that. And we spent 2 minutes talking about business. So we really want to have this again. This is, it's probably not a good use of time, for a prime lunch meeting time. But why don't we do this after work? Why don't we get together and just talk about what are we doing on our own spiritual or journeys, whether it's religion, whether it's spirituality, whether it's mindset. And so we started a group called the Zen Duffy Crew. And once every 6 to 7 weeks, we'll go out and sit on a boat on the harbor for 2 hours. We'll do a guided meditation. We'll talk about books we're reading. We'll talk about our practices. And I mean, that you talk about a safe space to be vulnerable. We talk about where our challenges are with our emotions, our energy, how we present ourselves for others. How do we present ourselves for ourselves? Are we living in line with our values? How do you do that? And that's all mindset. That's a group that it's us just constantly working on ourselves.
What are your thoughts on virtual versus in person as you're building these relationships and connecting?
I think they can both work. I certainly think they can both work. I think that face to face is really important. Just because we're so distracted, I think it comes down to what is the commitment, what's the expectation. What's nice about the boat crew, for instance, is that everyone's sitting there, or it's almost like sitting around a dining room table. It's that level of intimacy. Everyone's sitting around a central table, so no one's on their phone. There's no computers interrupting. There's no people. We don't have any animals running around. There's nothing to distract us. And a lot of times we're just sitting.
No kids walking around in the background and cats like I'm dealing with here. So
yeah, the closest we'll have is the closest that we'll have is a boat go by. And so that's it. It's really calm and we're outside in nature, which I really like. But that's a group that's the environment that we want. I would have no problem having a community that's totally virtual. You think about both you and I have spent a considerable amount of time on LinkedIn in the last couple of years. And maybe it's not the way that you would normally think of a mastermind group, but I certainly think it is a mastermind. I've interacted with people like you that become friends, become co-advisors, become people who you're collaborating with on all kinds of things. And it's just from showing up authentically on that virtual platform. Yep. It's posting whenever you can. It's responding when you can. It's shooting personal messages. There's a guy that I met on LinkedIn a couple of years ago now, it seems like, and he makes these great financial videos. And he kind of disappeared for a while. And it was just a quick message saying, "Hey man, I miss you. What's going on?" And that was real though. I hadn't seen him for a while. I noticed his absence and wanted to let him know he was being thought about. And that was important to him, that he felt that personal connection, even though we've never met in person. I don't think we've ever even spoken on the phone. We've probably exchanged an email twice and a couple of DMs, but mostly just talking on each other's walls. And for us, that was enough to build camaraderie. And I think if you take it the next step forward, how old's your son?
11.
Does he play Xbox?
All day long, pretty much.
How many friends do you think he has that are real friends to him?
In person versus virtually, you mean? Or
no. How many friends do you think he has on Xbox Live that he's never met before, maybe never talked to on the phone or even text messaged or anything, but he would tell you, those are my friends?
Oh, good number. Yeah. I mean, dozens, a dozen. Yeah.
That's the reality, is that these micro communities are being formed that they don't require personal interaction. Right. They don't require in-person interaction. They just require that everyone who's there is authentic. Everyone who's there is transparent. Everyone who's there has a similar goal. They want to have fun. They want to have fun with people who talk the same way they do, who don't bully people the way that others do. I think I see that with my nephews, is that if there's someone who's overblown or takes things too seriously or blows up, they don't want to play with them. They don't want to play with someone who has a different demeanor than them. So they find those similarities, and that's how they create their bonds. It's going to work the same way with us. The same ways that, when I looked at good advisors finish first, it doesn't have to be people who have met in person. It's people who have the same mentality, which is that the industry and ourselves are better if we're all better.
And not everybody has that mentality. And that's, this ties in so closely to everything that we're trying to do, but and it's all becoming clearer as we move forward. But there's one invitation. Everyone's invited. There's one invitation. Everything subsequent is an application process. And basically it becomes a whittling down process to find your group of 4, 5, 6, I mean, maybe even 1-to-1, like this small intimate group, which can be virtual or in person. And it's, I keep saying everyone's invited, seating is limited. Seating is limited is self-selecting. We don't ever have to say, oh, we're extra exclusive. We're only saving seat. People will self-select. I'm not, they're not part of it. It's just not going to be a fit. And there's going to be people that will, maybe have these ulterior motives or, but you'll be able to, you can see through it because of just how things are being done. Transparency. If we have the lights on, like I keep saying, and do this all under a bright light, you're going to see who people are. And smart people, if they're not maybe the best people, smart, they're not going to want to come into the light. And, hopefully they do. And again, that's part of this is we're hoping that we can demonstrate and bring more in, but not everybody's ready. And so seating is limited, kind of takes care of itself.
And I think the lights are on is such an important aspect. There's, I hear this a lot from advisors, is just the amount of misinformation that's out there. And I think it's intentionally leaving things out. I don't even know what that's called. There's got to be a term for, hey, here's how good this can be. And all these other things are just kind of missing, which are this is highly unlikely. It's like saying, if you go to Vegas, you're going to leave rich because this guy won a slot machine. I mean, like there's these just things that people talk about. They just glance over how unlikely they are, or all the things that have to line up to get there. And I think that's what I'm excited about, is people who are willing to say, hey, how do we share this in a way that makes it transparent? And if you have people who are on one end of the spectrum, which is, it's mostly right, that's fine. And if you have people who are, that's impossible, this should be outlawed. You get to have both sides of it and figure out, where do you fit? Where do you blend in? What do you think is enough? What do you think is not enough for disclosure and transparency? All the things we talk about are complex transactions or complex assets, complex taxes around them. There's complex rules around ownership. There's all kinds of things that we have to figure out. And advisors have enough problems to do the mechanics, do the technical work. On top of that, adding marketing. On top of that, adding running their own business or their own entity. This is where I think that this kind of group is going to help out so much, is that there's a lot of areas that we want help or we want camaraderie, or that we excel at, that we can share. And there's so many different aspects of what we do that you can find the people who are working on them, who excel at them, who are willing to help out and find the right niches. I love to say that, you don't have to find someone who's gone from A to Z. You can find someone who's gone from A to B. You can find someone who's gone from G to J, and just take those little pieces and eventually work yourself from A to Z.
Yeah. I mean, everybody, I keep saying, good advisors finish first. I mean, there really is no end line. We all, in one of the values is pass the torch. We're looking to, this is a struggle. We're all looking to get better together for indefinitely, and then pass the torch on, to whoever's coming next. And not everybody has that mentality. And I think part of that is, when I first started out, there was a lot of the bad, or a lot of the things that I saw in the industry were part of the motivation that was driving me. And that still is to some extent, but I've evolved or changed. Like, I don't think it's necessary to throw stones and, put people down. Like, some people just truly don't know any better. Like, it's like, they just aren't aware. And I've been saying this, it's sadly, there's a purposeful lack of transparency. I mean, it has to be purposeful, because I just had a conversation with a couple of advisors the other day, and we were talking through compensation and just a number of, these are smart people that should be able to figure this out. And we were joking about it. Well, I don't know exactly, how many hands are in the cookie jar, how all this stuff. And it's like, how can we expect an advisor to convey value and price and cost to a client if they don't even know how that works for themselves? And you look at just how the industry's been done. It's like, high up, it's like, well, let's just put a blanket over their eyes and they'll never figure it out. Well, beyond just what we're doing, there are other groups that are coming together and collaborating, right? And things that you've done where people are going to share and they're going to talk and they're going to understand what things look like next door. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's only going to help everyone improve. And so in my mind, we don't have to say something's good or bad. I think we can demonstrate that there's simply a better way by showing the benefits that come from operating in full transparency, operating with that true mentality of reciprocity.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a perfect example, though. You talk about the compensation model side, is that's an aspect that is important to one advisor and not a priority to the other. And we can jump on it and say that, their clients are a victim of their ignorance, or that they should have done this. But the fact is, if they're great at marketing, if they're good at bringing people in the door and serving and making the client feel heard and taken care of and protecting their client, just because they don't know all the aspects of their compensation model for their business, doesn't make them automatically bad for all these other things. And I think that's where we go into and say, hey, here's resources that can help you understand this so you can be even better. It's not that you're bad. It's not that you're victimizing anybody.
And everybody can get better. And that's part of this too, right? Is there's been some people that don't necessarily are less enthusiastic about some of the things that we're doing. And part of this is there is no stage. There is no spotlight on a single person. Every single one of us can constantly improve. And some people understand how valuable that mindset is, right? Is that I can always keep getting better. And part of that also is finding the right community, your tribe, as you've done, is, find the people that are going to demand that of you.
Yeah. No, and that's where I think that every mastermind can be different too, which is nice. And I'm excited to see how this works in the pairings. Is that I wonder if you'll have themes where this is the kind of thing that we're working on, or this is a project. We're going to spend this many weeks working on this focus. I kind of run in batches like that myself. Have a few big quarterly goals and then break it down into weekly bites. And those are the kind of things, I love working on with other people. It's so helpful for me to have that kind of weekly check-in. And I love helping other people do that. I love sitting down, getting to say, hey, let's quantify let's build this big goal out there, and let's kind of break it down into actionable bites. Let's go through it. Let's figure out what are those really highly levered actions we can take each week to move the ball towards that goal. And that's something I love to do. So, that I think those little project pieces will be fun inside the community as well.
And that's why I'm really excited to have you be part of this, because you're going to get to help with a lot of that, John. So
I love that. I mean, that's something I tell you, if you look at my list of, I do this goal setting exercise, usually about once every other year. I make myself do it. It's a 30-day project. For 30 days in a row, I write out my 10 life goals in present tense, positive, personal format. And every day I do it without looking at what I wrote the day before. And so it starts, and it's a really neat process, because the first time you do it, you write down, I have this, I've accomplished this, I've built this. And then what you realize as you go through it for 30 days is you're not sitting there looking, what did I write yesterday? You're thinking again, present, what are my goals? And it helps you start dwindling things down to their core, and you get some clarity on it. It's a long story, but one of mine is helping people start and grow their business. And so getting to do this is something that I find like a blessing. Like it's a blessing that I get to do that, because I love it. I would do it for free. If I could spend all my time doing that, I would help people with that.
Well, but that's part of what the intention is behind saying finish first, is that you don't have to do it for free. It's that if you have that genuine mindset, the reciprocity, yes, you're going to be revisited with more business and more things that are just naturally going to come as a consequence of what you're doing, more so than if you didn't operate in that capacity. So that's the other thing, is that I feel like there's going to be, and I guess, our industry, the mentality for so long, and this kind of goes into when you have government oversight, when you have even self-regulatory, it's that there's almost a sense of, well, we need to apologize for making money. No, there's nothing wrong with earning it. And it comes down to, and you were kind of, saying this with client, it comes down to value. It's not about cost, it's about value. And if the client values, if you're changing somebody's life in their minds, their comfort and their value of life is, I mean, some of these things, I mean, you can't even put a price tag on it. And so I do believe that there's going to be immense value that you other members are going to receive. And, again, that's nothing to apologize for, right? It's something to celebrate. We all can get better together.
Right. Yeah. And that's definitely an area that I've it's funny you say that. That's an area that I need to work on, which is being open to getting paid for things like this, because I would never even think to ask the question. It's always just been something of, hey, I can help, so I help.
Well, and again, but you indirectly, right? You will be compensated. It's a natural consequence of you put that. It's just like, the mindset thing, right? You're going to attract attracts like. You're going to find the right people, and the same thing I believe from a business perspective as well.
Oh, I totally agree. I don't do any marketing. I don't do any advertising. I don't do any outbound anything. The only things I've done to drive business has been post on LinkedIn for free, sharing. Anytime an advisor asks me a question, I post the response on LinkedIn. And that's part of just what I decided, is that if this person asked the question, they're not the only one that has the question. So let's get the answers out there. Let's share all these things. And literally doing that and talking to advisors I've met over the years about what I do has driven all of my business. It's completely referral based. It's completely personal referral based. I typically get one inbound request to work on a case every 1 to 2 weeks on LinkedIn. And that's hey, I've got a client who's working on this, or I've got a client who already bought this. Can you help? Or I have a client who's trying to unwind this. Can you help? Or how would you approach these things? I want to learn how to do this. Those are all inbound things that come from this. So I certainly, I don't take that for granted whatsoever. I know that I know the energy comes back that you put out, and I haven't tracked and said this is the ROI, but I'm not interested in that. What I know is it feels good. It feels like I feel blessed to get to just share answers all day, and that's the lifestyle that I want.
All right. Well, speaking of lifestyle, I think we need to let you get back to your vacation there. Thank you so much for
today's a work day. Actually, I knew I couldn't do 2 weeks off, so I put bookend meetings for about 4 or 5 hours today.
All right. Well, regardless, work day, you taking the time to do this, really, really appreciate it. Really appreciate you being part of what we're doing. Again, I think your experience, your mindset, again, this week, beyond strictly, premium financing, insurance, just simply your experience in building these masterminds, building this collaboration that is successful, I think is going to be immensely valuable to what we're doing. And again, really appreciate it, John, joining, and looking forward to seeing what we can do going forward.
Yeah, happy to do it, John. Great to see you, man.
Thanks.
Yep. All right. Be well.